All right, everyone, we're back with a brand new Cabral concept, episode 2925 of the show. We're going to be going over, are the blue zones a hoax? One of the reasons why I want to tackle this topic is because whenever anything becomes popular or anyone becomes popular, there are always the naysayers. Now, sometimes the naysayers are correct, but no matter what I've learned in life is that whoever believes in something, there's almost an equal counterpart to those that don't believe. What I like to do is just simply keep an open mind and say, does the information that someone is presenting me serve myself, my community, and my family? Can I use anything from this instead of course, throwing the whole thing out? Because oftentimes there are elements and greater elements of truth that maybe we're throwing out with just one or two small points that we don't necessarily believe in. And so when I look at the blue zones, and I've read every book by Dan Buettner on the blue zones, I'd say I've researched the blue zones as much as a person can besides Dan Buettner. I've taught it inside of my high performance health. It's not the only thing, but I've really studied it in depth. Like I said, I've had conversations with Dan Buettner. So I would say that I know this material inside and out. I'm not saying that I'm the expert on the blue zones. I think Dan is, but that's not, I don't want to be the expert, I would say, in any one thing. My job is to be as integrative as I can. Look at the best of Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, bioregulatory medicine, naturopathy, functional medicine, Eastern-based philosophy, and so much more. So what I want to do today is I want to present to you, and then you can decide at the end if you believe the blue zones are a hoax. So let's dive right into it. I'm going to be going over some PubMed research today, and then it's just kind of teaching you what the blue zones are in general, so that again, you get to decide. I don't believe that anyone should ever tell you what you're supposed to do with your health. I really don't. I think that there should be people that teach you, that give you information, that guide you based on their experience, their research, but then ultimately you feel what's the best fit for you. Okay, so there was a study, and I went over this on a previous Cabral concept. I'm happy to link it up as well, because I'm just going to give you a brief overview. It's called the Danish Twin Study. The Danish Twin Study showed that only about 20% of overall longevity is dictated by genes, and that a full 80% is based on and influenced by environment and how a person lives their life. Now, if you look at this, this is not uncommon or unheard of in naturopathy or a traditional sense of functional medicine, not just prescribing hormones. Again, I'm not even saying that I'm against that, but that's what functional medicine is basically being turned into. I don't love the name anymore because unfortunately it's basically run your blood work and then get prescribed hormones. And that's not functional medicine. That's not looking for a root cause. It's looking for, basically a nail to hit with a hammer. And I'm not trying to disparage anybody who recommends hormones, but let's look for the underlying root cause. If a male has low testosterone in his 30s, come on, let's help that individual find out why they have low testosterone rather than just putting them on testosterone. So I don't want to go up my soapbox and start talking about that. But in functional medicine, we've basically said forever that only 5% is really genetic and 95% is the epigenetics, the influence of our environment on our genes. Now, not all of it is us making poor decisions, meaning purposely choosing poor decisions. Sometimes we're exposed to heavy metals. Sometimes we're exposed to pesticides and herbicides and any one of the 100,000 man-made chemicals that I speak about in the rain barrel effect. We don't always know. When I was in college, I didn't know that eating tuna fish was going to lead to me having high levels of mercury. I had no idea. Nobody taught me that. It doesn't say that on the outside of a can of tuna. And I was a poor college kid, and I wanted an inexpensive protein to be able to help put on muscle, when I was lifting weights in college. So I would eat microwavable rice, and I would eat a can of tuna and pour cheap olive oil on top. And that's what I did. And that was like a $3 meal, right? So, the thing is, we learn as we go. We get better as we go. We're not supposed to know everything at once, but the blue zones may be able to teach us something, because these individuals typically live an extra 10 to 15 years longer on average than your typical American or Westerner. So what do? Or where are they from? 5 different main locations, with a few more being recognized and maybe some being taken off the map that I'm not going to get as much into it today. But in the United States, we have Loma Linda in California. In Central or not quite South America, we've got Costa Rica. right? So Nicoya, Costa Rica. Then in Italy, we have Sardinia. Not specifically all of Sardinia, but actually the hills specifically in Sardinia, in Italy and Sardinia. And then we have Ikaria, Greece. So a specific island in Greece, and then a specific island in Japan called Okinawa. Now, what's interesting is if you've seen the Blue Zones documentary, Singapore might be becoming more of a blue zones. That remains to be seen. And Okinawa, unfortunately, is falling out of the blue zones. They're now one of the worst, believe it or not, in health in the area. And that is because with 55,000 Westerners on this small island, KFCs and Taco Bells and all sorts of fast food restaurants have come in. And unfortunately, that is now degrading the overall healthy lifestyle of the Okinawans who lived there for so many generations. I actually got to see this firsthand when I did one of my internships in old Beijing, not new Beijing, but old Beijing, in China. And I got to see how the grandparents lived, their children, and then very specifically their grandchildren. And it was the grandchildren, and I'm telling you right now, and I'm saying this very honestly, if I saw one or two, that was about it. Overweight grandparents, like one or two. And I worked in a traditional Chinese medicine hospital. But what I saw with the grandchildren was more of the fast food, more of the video games, more of being on their phones, less activity, poor food choices. And then we saw that weight gain. We saw the poor health come along with it, which is too bad. And that's essentially what we're now seeing in Okinawa. Okay, so those are the blue zones. You're welcome to look more into it, but really, what are they doing? Well, instead of formal workouts, they're really moving more naturally. There's more manual labor. There's more walking. There's getting your 8,000 to 10,000 steps per day. There's moving around town. And there's plenty of, it's funny because in most of these areas, not so much Loma Linda, but most of these areas, lots of hills. People walk a lot of hills. Why does that matter? Well, when I look into it from a more science-based perspective, when you walk a hill, you move from what's called zone 1 cardio to zone 2 cardio. You actually elevate your heart rate an extra 10 to 15 to maybe 20 beats per minute, and that enables you greater cardiovascular based capacity. So pretty fantastic. I'm going to run through these 9 really quick. Basically, these are the tenets of the blue zones. The next one is this. We're going to move into Outlook. What they do is they have what's called a downshift at night. So they move from any type of fight or flight more into that parasympathetic, calming overall stress. They also feel that they have a sense of purpose. Not just when they're younger, they're working, they have a family, but actually grandparents and great-grandparents are brought into the homes. They are made to feel like they have a part of the family. They share the traditions, they share their wisdom, and they also congregate as a group. So grandparents, great-grandparents will get together with their friends. They'll be more into playing games. They'll be more into, meaning like mental games as well. Although in the documentary, you see them playing pickleball and different, activities like that, dancing, singing, crocheting, etc. So, nice to see is make sure you maintain that sense of purpose. I talk about that in the rain barrel effect, is that success mindset, is that you can't give up on life, right? Or life kind of gives up on you. You want to keep on keeping on. And then for diet, okay, they've got the wine at 5. Again, I'm not a believer in wine at 5. I only understand wine at 5 because I know wine is a toxin for the body. However, does it downshift? Yeah, it helps to downshift. The issue is that if you have wine really past 5 o'clock and you go to bed at a fairly normal hour, around 10 o'clock or so, it absolutely does affect your sleep. So maybe a small amount, 3, 4, 5 ounces at 5 o'clock, but I can't recommend that in terms of overall health. So that is one thing that Dan and I have a small disagreement on. I do know that when you take alcohol with plant-based foods, it does pull out more of those polyphenols. So, it's not that you never throw out everything all at once. You understand that there are certain components of it, but I don't think consuming alcohol certainly helps you to live a longer life. I actually, if anything, I think they've been shown that it shrinks the brain and many other factors. All right, predominantly plant-based diet. 90+% plant-based. Every single blue zone had some type of meat, fish, dairy, eggs, but it was not the predominance of their diet. Loma Linda was the only not vegan, but vegetarian-based community. They did not eat any meat, fish, or eggs in that community, at least the ones that Dan studied. And they lived a very long life. You can say the same essentially for Seventh-day Adventists as well. So what did they predominantly eat then? Well, they predominantly ate legumes and beans for a lot of the protein, and then yes, some small amounts of fish, meat, etc. So it's something to look at. I do believe in a predominantly plant-based diet as well, because when I'm looking at things from an unbiased perspective, all of the really great gerontologists, longevity-based scientists show that a predominantly plant-based diet gives you the best chance for living a long, healthy life. Not the best chance for building up a lot of muscle and body transformation, but certainly the best chance for a longer, healthier life. And again, when I say that, usually people then tune out because they want to eat a lot of meat. They want to eat a lot of fish. And I would just say, I don't think it has to be all or nothing, right? I think that there's somewhere in the middle, and depending on your activity level, you can find the right amount for you. One other one, Harahashibu, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it basically means eat until 80% full. Right? So you don't stuff yourself at any one meal, because we've seen, and I'll do another show on this, basically this endotoxemia, or this inflammation that can be created in the gut. Whenever you pack yourself so full of food, it's why I'm against the 1 meal a day diet. If you pack yourself full of all this food, it takes a tremendous amount of energy to break it down, producing larger amounts of stomach acid to break down all the protein. And then you're putting everything into your intestines all at once. And now it needs to work on that digestion, normal bowel movement or bowel peristalsis movement through the intestines. Just not the best thing to do. So we can eat a decent amount, right? Whatever 80% full is for us. And then we can especially make our last meal at night a smaller meal and have a nice sleep going to bed. All right, connections I'm just going to run through quick. Putting loved ones first, a sense of belonging, and understanding that you can't have a million friends, have a handful of good friends you consider your tribe. All right, so that's the blue zones. Now, the thing is, when people see that, or maybe they don't, I don't think most people actually usually know what the blue zones are, to be truthful. They think it's maybe just a plant-based diet. I think that's what they think the blue zones are. No, it's not just a plant-based diet. It is all of those 9 tenets that Dan gathered together. And when I looked at basically a Venn diagram. So a Venn diagram would be, let's look at all 5 countries, and usually it's three for a Venn diagram, but anyway, we'll say it's 5. And when you look at, all right, so let's say Loma Linda, they did not consume any alcohol, and they did not consume any meat, and they were really faith-based, right? But that was not every blue zone. It wasn't. Some blue zones had more wine, like in Italy. But not in Loma Linda, California. Some use things like anti-inflammatory herbs like turmeric, right? And that was in Japan, but not all. So what did all of them do, though? All right, well, basically the 9 tenets that Dan spoke about, but not the wine at 5 and not a few others. It was family, a sense of belonging, no smoking, plant-based diet, predominantly plant-based diet, moderate physical activity most days of the week, like the 8,000 to 10,000 steps per day. Engaging in social-based relationships in the community, and having about 1 cup of legumes or beans per day. Now, does that matter? I don't know. But when you look at it, it's fiber, it's protein, it feeds good gut bacteria, improves butyrate. And so, yeah, it could be. Helps with heart disease, helps with blood pressure, helps with blood sugar. So maybe it does matter. But that is, when you look at the Venn diagram, what matters. So now, if we're saying the blue zones are a hoax, what are we really saying? Like, these things don't matter? Well, these things are all about healthy lifestyle. And where is someone really going wrong? Like, let's just read those again. Sense of belonging, small group of friends that you can really connect with, putting your family and loved ones, at the top of your priority list, predominantly plant-based diet. Sure, you could argue with that one. Eating until 80% full. I don't know how you argue with that one. Wine at 5. Okay, yeah, we could argue with that. Downshifting at night, kind of reducing stress by like 5 or 6 o'clock, and then having a sense of purpose. And then moving naturally, getting your 10,000 steps a day, which is like, these are things that are clinically proven to work. So I just don't, how do you even say the blue zones are a hoax? But let's just say you do. That's why I like to, again, bring you everything. Now, here's what the science says, because they said, okay, does the blue zones work? So here's what they did. Dan Buettner was in charge of this. He went and created a case study. He said, can we take the tenets of the blue zones and move them to any city in the United States, right? That does not have great life expectancy. So here's what they did. They did a case study in Albert Lea. I apologize. I actually don't know how to say it. It's L-E-A, Albert Lea, I'm assuming, Minnesota. And what they did was they got 25% of the population to say, yes, I want to be a part of this blue zone longevity and health improvement study. The mayor was in, businesses were in. They actually built sidewalks because it was very hard to walk around Albert Lea at that time. And after a couple of years, they kicked this off. It was in association with the University of Minnesota, and they developed what's called a Vitality Compass. And it was a free tool to let people calculate their overall life expectancy and other broad metrics. In total, they captured 33 metrics. When people ate, how often they attended worship, their body mass index, completing all sorts of different assessments at baseline, and then throughout the study. And they had about 1,100 people join in different walking groups. They called it the Walking Moai, and 60% of which are still together 5 years later. That's important because you want to be able to see if these things are maintainable. Residents also attended a purpose-defining class and were quickly matched with volunteer organizations to provide them with a new outlet for this new purpose. All right, here it is. After the first year of the pilot project in Albert Lea, with 3,400 total participants, the 1,100 were in the walking group, 24% of the population finished. Entering the participants' information in the Vitality Compass program suggests an average life expectancy gain of 3.2 years due to changes in life habits. Participants also self-reported a collective weight loss of 7,280 pounds. That's pretty phenomenal because if we just do quick math, on average, they each lost a couple pounds. Now, probably some gained weight, some stayed the same, and many lost 10 to 20 pounds. That's usually how these studies work. The city of Albert Lea independently reported a 40% drop in healthcare costs for city workers. That means they use their health insurance 40% less. I mean, that's remarkable. 40%, basically in half. Let's see. Buettner noted that some of these figures briefly caught the media attention, but the underlying question is, so they were basically looking to say, can we keep this going? How much does it cost? So they are now looking into additional studies. They had like more than 100 different cities apply. This is what they said, that they can help workplaces to implement effective intervention within 1 year, but it typically takes 3 to 5 years, sometimes longer, to put in place a new blue zone. And the reason is because of politics and policy change in order to be able to effectively implement this. So that's now looking at what happens when you implement the blue zones, even over a large study of 3,400 people. So I think that, in my opinion, I would say the blue zones are absolutely not a hoax. I would say that there's lots of research individually around all of those 9 tenets. And even if you don't agree with all of them, I would try to incorporate as many of those as you can. If you want to go really in depth on anti-aging, longevity, how to add another 20 years to your life based on sound scientific principles that go well beyond the blue zones, check out highperformancehealth.org. I think you'll be very interested in what you see. And if you are a health coach or in the health-based field or want to become a high-performance health coach, you can certainly look at a certification tract in that as well. So love being able to bring you these types of studies. Hopefully this was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. And of course, do feel free to share the show with anyone you believe it could serve. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything. Functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.